Welcome to The Creative Shift. My name is Dan Blank, author of the book Be the Gateway and founder of WeGrowMedia.com. So today I want to talk about this theme of who will take care of you and really discuss the importance of having collaborators and mentors in the process of how you create and how you share. So I was reminded of this by a couple of different things this week. The first, of course, is my most recent interview with author and artist Nikki Grimes. That is elsewhere on the podcast right before this episode. I strongly encourage you to check that out. I'll talk more about her in a moment. But the other night, I was sitting on the couch with my 4-year-old son. He was showing me one of his books, and he said, "Well, where are your books?" I said, "Oh, they're back at the studio." And he goes, "Well, who's there now?" And I said, "Well, no one, because I'm here with you." And he goes, "When you're there, it's you and one other person." I said, "No, it's just me." And he says, "Then who will take care of you?" And, it was sort of, for me anyway, an adorable moment. And of course, it was a reflection on the life that he leads, which is a life where there is always a parent or a teacher or a sibling who is there to take care of him. And it had me, really thinking a lot about all the ways that as a writer or as an artist or a creator, we often think of this idea that we are creating alone. And there are certainly some senses that we do that. But something that I believe in is this idea that we are much more likely to succeed when we are collaborating with other people. And we are much more likely to fail when we sort of vehemently go it alone. We eschew, we push away any opportunity to bring others into our process of how we create and share. And I'll say this is different for everyone. There's no one right way to do it, and all of us can find examples of any kind of path that someone takes that worked really well for them. I'm talking kind of generally here, but it's something that I experience all the time, and I want to talk more about that in this conversation. And if you're a writer listening to this, I've seen this apply to every kind of path of how you publish, whether it's traditionally published, whether you are self-publishing, whether you're doing a hybrid or something else entirely. This is not always just about having an agent or having an editor that you hire. The way that you can collaborate, it can be really subtle and really myriad and really interesting, I think. But I think that a lot of people have a resistance to this idea of collaborating for any number of reasons. One could be this idea of a sentimental sense of, I'm going it alone, I'm doing it on my own. Another could be something more personal, this idea of what I am creating is from my heart. And this is a very difficult process of expressing that, which of course it is. And sometimes people move away from this idea of collaborating or involving others or even telling others that they're creating because they're so afraid that it somehow corrupts the process. That if someone knows that they're creating, it will shape their art in a way they don't want, and it will change it. And again, it's different for everyone, so you've got to find what works for you. But, so much of what I do here is talk to writers and creators all day and listen to interviews and read books about and consider the lives of how people have created and shared and found success. And there's something that jumps out at me so much is how it is always filled with other people. And that without these people, in most situations, I would never have known their work or never have known them. And that really jumps out at me because I think it's a very fickle thing, how great work gets shared or gets created. I always think back to this 2013 video I saw from author John Green. It was actually an acceptance speech for an award. But especially at the time, and I think it still holds true now, he and people like him, he was really being held up as someone who had a direct connection to his audience because he had a lot of YouTube subscribers. He and his brother were very, very early to YouTube, and they found really amazing success, and they've grown that. And of course, they extended that to a variety of other things, from causes and nonprofits to other companies to events to so much else. But of course, to other social media. And when Tumblr was huge, he had a lot of Tumblr followers. And he said, he's often held up as this symbol of the new way. That here is an author who doesn't need the mechanism of traditional publishing because he can directly reach his audience. And we can model that out to think of, that means he can launch a book, tweet it out to millions of people or whatever platform he's on, and then sell thousands upon thousands of books. He doesn't need, people might think, an agent, a publisher, an editor, a bookseller, all these things, because he has this new paradigm. And what he says in that video is how that's so unbelievably false. And he talks about how not just he has so many people in the process of how his books get shared, from booksellers, editors, warehousing staff, IT support, so many others, but even in the creative process, how his editor and collaborators helped save books that he was writing and were, he's saying, not good, not on the right path. That without them, these books would not only not have been created, they just wouldn't have been good. And then, of course, they wouldn't have been out there. And he's very passionate in that video, which I think is just so fascinating to see. And it had this whole week with what Nikki shared and with what my son shared, and thinking about this, I was really considering, self-reflecting a way of like, well, how do I do that for myself? And I wrote about this in my newsletter. I'm talking about it right now. And it's like it would be so easy to think that here I am in a room all by myself. Right now, I'm in a huge building all by myself. There's no one else in this whole building. I'm in this little room. There's a door right there. The door is locked. I can't hear a sound. It's 6:18 a.m. as I record this. And it'd be easy to think, here I am doing it on my own. But that isn't the truth. That's one way to look at it, but it's not the complete way to look at it. Of course, first and foremost, I'm only here because of my wife, because not only is she home with our children, but because she herself is an artist. And we have conversations constantly about what it means to create and what it means to share. And she has her own very, very extensive art projects that I get to observe. And I learn so much, either from observing her process and not getting in the way, or in elements where we talk about it. And those conversations and what I observe and who she is just is so much a part of not just my ability to create, but what I create and how I create. It's all in there. Obviously, I can only be here because someone is renting me this office, and they've made this building available to me at the very early hours that I like to work. I like to get to work early. I'm the kind of person who loves being here at 4:30 a.m., 5 a.m., and that's my creative time. And I feel very fortunate to have that. Obviously, I'm recording to this on a variety of equipment designed and built by other people, whether it's the computer, the camera, the teleprompter, the microphone, the cables, the lighting, the whole thing. This is all stuff not created by me. I mentioned Nikki Rimes before, which I'll talk a lot more about. But, in the interview, she shared so much about not just her life, which is like endlessly inspiring to me, but this idea of her collaborators. We'll talk more about that in a moment because there's a lot to share there. Of course, you are a part of this. If you are listening to this or watching this, you are a person I'm reaching, and I'm so aware of that. I've sent out a weekly email newsletter every week for 15 years. I've put out a mostly weekly podcast every weekish for many years. I am writing this. I'm creating because there is someone I know that might be helped by this or inspired by this. It helps me to think about what to create and how to create. And of course, I communicate with a lot of my readers and listeners, people who email me on whether it's email or social media or some other way. And that's all a part of this too. And I am not unaware of the fact that once I finish this, it will be published. It'll be published maybe in my newsletter, going out to thousands of people on Twitter, to 10,000 people, other social media. I'm aware of that as I create it, and that's a part of how I create as well. Every day I speak with writers just through email and other means because this is what I do, and those are the people that I love collaborating with, the creators and artists and writers. And their challenges and their questions and their stories and their experiences are a part of what I create and how I create. On the wall over here, I have a wall filled with photos of writers, artists, photographers, painters, performers, designers, people who create. And this is, a revolving gallery, so to speak, of different people. But what I do is I stare at them all day. And I think about what they've created. I think about their backstory. I think about their challenges. I think about the amazing talent. I think about the amazing hard work. I think about the luck. All day I sit here and stare at these faces and meditate on that, so to speak. And their journeys are a part of what I create and how I create, even though they're not physically here with me. And many of them are not even alive, but their work lives on and their story lives on. Behind me is a shelf full of books. Most of them are about creativity, are about anxiety in the creative process, are, biographies of people. And again, for the same reason, digging deep into that story is what helps to inspire me and to have me understand what it is to create and what I should be creating. Of course, my clients, the people I work with every day, are such a big part of this because I am sort of in the trenches with them. We are co-creating together, and that not only inspires me in terms of what they are creating and why, which is why I love doing this, to work with the person who is building something that they believe in is like the ultimate for me. And then through the way we work, what their goals are, what their context, what their demeanor and their preferences and their boundaries are, that is such a thing that fuels what I do and what I create and how I share it. And of course, their engagement and support is critical to all of this. Every week, I speak with collaborators Jenny Nash and Laurie Richmond, and we have conversations about creativity and about business and about so many other things. And we dig into really deep questions, and they are a part of this as well. So, yeah, in one sense, there's a reality that I'm here alone. And even to a degree that only I alone could create this podcast or this week's newsletter in the way that I did. But so many other people are a part of it. They are supporting me. They're giving me the inspiration, the fuel, like the creative energy, permission to create, permission to share, accountability, and really a sense of sustainability. Without these people, this doesn't happen. This doesn't exist. And I'm always aware of that. And this week especially, I was really reflecting on that. And of course, I published my interview with Nikki Grimes this week. And it just felt just such an honor to be able to speak with her. I was so excited when she said yes. And it was one of these interviews where I felt like I couldn't possibly fit it all in an hour. And I feel like I definitely did not. I could have spoken with her across multiple interviews or multiple hours and still only scratched the surface to all that she has created. There's so much in this interview. One thing that she talked about that aligns with all of this, and I'd be thinking about it, was the importance of having colleagues and mentors. She shared the story of how when she was younger, writing and reading was the escape for her, and that when she started taking herself seriously. And she said that when she was in school, people kind of laughed at her when they told her what she wanted to do, that she wanted to write. This is what she does. And she said, I decided I needed to surround myself with other young people who had dreams that they wanted to pursue. They became like my posse. I started seeking those kids out, and they became the people I surrounded myself with. I am sure that made all the difference. She has published more than 80 books, and she's an artist and has created so much else. Of course, she has done so much that was just her, without question. But to think about her at that young age and the importance of having collaborators, even her saying that might have made a difference or even the difference, it's such a powerful statement. And she was really clear that it wasn't just surrounding herself with writers, but with other artists, visual artists, dancers, performers, whatever. These were all people who were doing that. And she listed this astounding list of colleagues and mentors that she had when she was really going through this. People who have just achieved so much, including, she says, is her first mentor, James Baldwin. And it's incredible to think of that, to not just think about back to a time maybe when you were really creating a lot or just coming into your own, but to think about having colleagues and connections to other people who are creating and experiences with them and relationships with them, professional relationships with them, that you've seen where they grow from there. Just totally blew me away. I highly recommend you check out that interview. It's the one with Nikki Grimes right before this episode. Google her, look up her books everywhere. Go to her website, nikkigrimes.com. She's on Instagram and Twitter. Just beyond inspiring. And if you're someone listening to this thinking, well, Dan, here I am alone because of where I am in life and maybe family or community or whatever, I don't look around and see a lot of other people who create, and I don't know how to find these people. And likely you are incredibly busy with family and work and health and so many other things. You might not even have the time to do that. So there's an infinite number of ways to do this, but if you want at least one piece of advice to start off, go online, go on Amazon, go on Goodreads, go on any online retailer, offline retailer. Think about what it is you create. If you're a writer, what other books would be shelved next to your book, either if it's been published or when it is published in the future? Where in that bookstore would you be shelved, and what other books are there? Look specifically for the books that have been published within the last 3 years or so. Write down these authors' names. And then buy these books. Read these books. And when you're done with that, email each of these authors and just thank them. Thank them for what they created. Explain to them what you liked about their books. And yeah, at the end mention, I'm writing too, and this is how you inspired me. And that's it. And then after that, make a habit of doing this, one email a week. And it can be not just to an author, but to anyone who supports the kind of work that inspires you and you create. So this could be a bookseller or a librarian or a reader or someone who speaks at events or runs events. Then flip how you use social media. Don't just look at it as a way of how do you amass an audience? How do you get followers? Think of it as a way that you can support others. How do you feature the work of other people and celebrate their work and champion their work on social media? And as you do this, you will understand the marketplace and who are colleagues, whether or not they're deeply engaging with you or not. Think about, is there a tiny way to collaborate with someone? Doing a Twitter chat or a giveaway or anything that's just a little collaboration with you and that other person. And this will start building that community around you. And if you hear all this and bemoan the fact that, gee, how will others care and support you? I will say that one way this happens is by, again, flipping that and thinking, well, first I have to care and support other creators. And through that, these relationships will form. Thank you so much for being here. You can read more about this at wegrowmedia.com. I've got a whole blog written about this. I send out a weekly newsletter every week. That's right on the homepage as well at wegrowmedia.com. Highly recommend you listen to the previous episode with author Nikki Grimes. I shared links to a lot of the people I mentioned in that blog post on my website. Otherwise, you can find me over on Twitter and Instagram and at Dan Blank. And that's about it. Thank you so much for listening until the end.